Hello, and welcome to the launch of Race Excellence, an industry-changing initiative. I'm Joy McKnight, former editor of The Banker magazine, which is part of the Financial Times Group, and it's my great pleasure to be moderating this webinar and to be part of the Race Excellence initiative. And we have a great lineup of inspiring and distinguished speakers today who are true leaders and champions of diversity and inclusion. And they are Sander Kerr, CBE, Dr. Oli Folayan, MBE, Dr. Gifford Ramey, and Anne Palmer. Before I invite our first distinguished guest to speak, I want to give some context to the importance of the launch of Race Excellence, especially for the financial services sector, which I've covered for the past 20 years. This initiative comes at a critical time for the banking industry, as the UK's financial watchdogs are currently developing a new regulatory framework on diversity and inclusion to accelerate the pace of change in the financial sector. They are addressing the fact that while there's been some progress in D&I in this sector, it's definitely not nearly enough. So the regulators are pushing for dedicated and sustained action to really move the needle. They want to see ambitious objectives and targets, and will be asking for data to back up any claims of improvement. And once the final regulatory requirements are published later this year, banks will have just 12 months to comply. But the banking industry, and I think this applies to all sectors, shouldn't view D&I as a tick box compliance exercise or even a good thing to do. It is really a business imperative. According to McKinsey research, a company with an ethically diverse executive team has a 30% chance or likelihood of financial outperformance amongst its peer group. So no matter what sector you work in, now is the time to position yourself and as an exceptional leader committed to advancing racial equity. And Race Excellence will help you achieve that. So just before we start, I have a few housekeeping tips. Only the panelists are visible and guests are muted. However, we are aware of your presence and we look forward to your participation. Please ask questions through the Q&A box. If we're unable to respond during the webinar, we'll definitely be following up after via email. Please feel free to post on social media using the hashtag RaceExcellenceLaunch, and that's all one word. And just to let everyone know that the event will be recorded. So I'm very excited to hand over to our first honorary guest this evening, Sander Kerr, CBE. Sander is Director of Business in the Community and renowned for her tireless advocacy and leadership in promoting diversity and equality in the workplace, particularly focusing on race and ethnicity. Thanks so much for joining us, Sandra.
Thank you very much, Joy, for that kind invitation, and really delighted to be here this evening. I'm going to share my screen with you because I want to share some insights and just talk to you a bit about the journey of race equality that we have been on using evidence. And I'm delighted to be at the launch of this really important dimension of support. Employers do need safe spaces. They do need credible connections who they can be open with and share challenges with. And I don't have any doubt that the Race Excellence team will be a trusted pair of hands. I met Anne during, I think it was a pandemic, actually. We engaged online, and I've seen the great work that she has done to really embed race action. So not just talking, but action in the education sector. So really delighted to be here. But I wanted to talk about the Race at Work Charter and just share a little bit of the story, the journey as to where we've come and where we're going on, where I think we need to go in the UK on this. So as already announced, I am the Director for Race Equality at BICC, Business in the Community, and have been for over 20 years, actually. It was 20 years last year. And it's amazing how time has flown on this agenda. but the changes and the challenges are persistent and real. So this Race at Work Charter, I want to use it as an example of what I think race excellence looks like, because it's based on evidence. It was established based on evidence. And the Race at Work survey, so we spearheaded a inquiry, really. We wanted to understand the lived experience. Particularly, I had heard for many years employers saying to me, Sandra, even if we get people into the workplace, there is a challenge about enabling them to retain them and enable them to progress to the levels that they desire, so that we can see a leadership team, mid-leadership team that represents the UK. And that insight from employers was used to inform the survey that created the charter. Hence why the commitments have come out with these areas of need for action. One is that leadership at the top table, so that executive sponsor role, and what actions they can take to ensure the organization is taking action, that there are targets to improve representation at senior levels. The second area of the charter was making sure data drove those decisions. So not only when looking at ethnicity in pay, ethnicity in recruitment, looking at all of the dimensions that of action and process that happen within an organization, using the data and the evidence to identify where action needs to be taken. And then we included a zero tolerance approach to bullying harassment, and we strengthened that commitment in 2021, because when we did the third running iteration of this survey, we found that that had not improved at all. And the results were showing 1 in 4 employees from Black, Asian, mixed race, ethnically diverse backgrounds experiencing bullying harassment from their line manager. And that hadn't changed since we've been running the survey. And we found, if anything, it seemed to be influencing engagement with customers and clients too. Managers, as you know, line managers are really key to the progression of employees in the workplace. And there were that kind of support to progress talent, to ensure the environment is enabling talent to thrive, was also identified as a really important area. The fifth area was progression. So our surveys that we have run in 2015, 2018, and 2021 consistently come out with a message that progression is very important to people from diverse ethnic backgrounds. So therefore, why are they not represented at the top? And this is the examined question for employers, because we've already examined with YouGov on multiple occasions. It is not about the qualifications. People are well qualified. There is a challenge to break that talent from mid-levels to whatever level they desire in the organization and their capability allows. And then when George Floyd was murdered, we saw white people, Black people, everybody out on the street saying, this has to stop. And from that, we introduced allyship through getting, again, evidence that there was a clear groundswell of people in the workplace saying, no, this, who are not necessarily ethnically diverse, white people saying this really matters. And also the old chestnut of supply chain and ecosystem, people in the community, and the need to be as inclusive as possible with those areas. And hence the charter commitments grew to 7. When the charter was established in 2018, it had 85 employers. And as you see, as of last Monday, it's 1,060 employers in the UK who signed up publicly, prepared to have their names listed, that they are committed to action on race in the workplace, which is absolutely wonderful. And just bringing you up to date with some of the things that we have just published. So this was just published on the 21st of March. We have been working with professors in Queen Mary and York University. And we commissioned, our leadership team commissioned them to go through more than 42,000 comments that we had collected over these studies to really hear and understand what employers were saying are the challenges in the workplace. So really, I recommend this read. It is a free download, but the insights and the calls to action will really, help you to think about where should we start? What areas should we look at? Really, really important. And then I want to bring you up to date to what we have also launched on the 23rd, 21st of March, which is supply chain. So in October last year, we did a survey of the more than 1,000 employers, and we asked them, what are you doing against the charter commitments? So again, race excellence is about actually getting under the bonnet and the skin of the organization, not just, oh, I've signed that charter tick box. No, what are you doing and how can we bring you forward into action? And when we, with the charter, we ran surveys. So we ran 3 surveys, and we ran one in 2023, and 238 employers signed who completed that survey. Not bad performance, still challenges across the 6 charter commitments that I've just shown you on the prior slide, but the area where there was kind of poor performance across the board was on inclusive supply chain. And what this demonstrated to me, that whilst employers were signing up to the charter, there's an absolute commitment, the know-how and action is a challenge. And what we found is with the main charter, 95%, everyone has an executive sponsor, somebody leading from the top on race equality more generally. But when we looked at supply chain, it was only 34%. One of the things we advocate is targets to help to focus using the benchmark of census data to set benchmarks of what representation should look like, be it a recruitment exercise, or should it be around progression or representation in the workplace. But we found only 23% were setting any targets to increase the diversity of their suppliers. And only 32 were asking about action. So even asking those that they were tendering with, what action are you taking? And really interestingly, when we asked about prompt payment, that was 18%. So again, it demonstrates to me that the will is there, the desire is there, because employers have signed a charter, and you have to get sign off from your chief exec, talk to your kind of senior team with a commitment to action. So it's not about that. It's about the know-how. And I think Race Excellence is designed to help employers with the know-how. So I want to just come down for a landing on some of some key things. So what we are doing as a result of those survey results, we actually have launched a diverse and inclusive supply chain survey. We have launched this in collaboration with YouGov because we want to capture the data from the UK landscape to show us, to demonstrate what does the UK landscape look like when we look at business ownership. And we are looking at this ownership across all the diversity characteristics in the census. And we want to use that data and insight to help employers make evidence-based decisions. So we are big on evidence in the race campaign at BITC. Really, I think it's really important because it helps you to be informed about where you might target your resources, where sometimes people wonder or can't understand why initiatives don't work across the board. And we absolutely advocate looking at that more granularly. So looking at it with the census categories in mind so that you can have more focused and nuanced advice. So I want to encourage you, if you have not, you're not aware of this survey, please go to our BITC website and complete the survey. It will help not only your organization, it will help communities, it will help young people who want to, are inspired to go into business ownership. We're asking about AI, we're asking about environment, being feeling climate ready. And we are doing this with a view to help to shape the best practice on both sides of the house, be it the larger employer, the small employer, the policymaker, so that we can make decisions that will enable businesses to thrive. And I'm using this example of how evidence can help, particularly when we think about the supply chain. So, for example, if the evidence demonstrates that there's a certain group or demographic or age profile who struggle more with access to finance, we'd be able to say to employers, if you get business owners that match this profile, be mindful that behind that there may be more struggles with cash flow and financing. So think about flexible payment terms to enable the cash flow to flow more smoothly into that organization and be able to extend the relationship and partnership. And that principle of evidence-based decision-making is what we need in the workplace as well. We know from our survey that we have run multiple times, strong desire for mentorship, sponsorship from ethnically diverse employees. And I think we've asked often, why is that needed? And I think where there are not role models, the people like me, people who look like me, it really matters to have that opportunity to talk to people, to being able to show the way. We also have some other events coming up down the line. We hope to share some stats at a Windrush webinar where we're going to have some leaders talk about their experience of being leaders in this space. And we're hoping to be able to surface some of the data from this supply chain survey that we're doing, and then we'll launch the full results in October. Our campaign, as I say, we've been capturing voices from employees in the workplace, and now we want to also we're capturing employee voices from the voices in the workplace with this survey, but also capturing the supply chain voices too, which are so important because they're part of the key ecosystem. And I really believe that if we can engage and support businesses to thrive, there will be an impact on communities, families, children in our schools, and the next generation, and everybody who can in the UK will have the opportunity to contribute and boost the UK economy. So really, again, delighted to thank you for the kind invitation this evening. Delighted to be here for the launch of the Race Excellence program and look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you very much.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Sandra. I thought that was really inspiring. And also, I think the work that you're doing is so important when you talk about all the surveys and gathering that evidence for better decision-making across the board. So now I'd like to hand over to our next speakers who will explain what race excellence is all about. And I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Gifford Ramey, an esteemed expert in the field of equity, diversity, and inclusion, renowned for his innovative approaches to fostering inclusive environments, and Anne Palmer, who's a distinguished education leader who's held various leadership roles within educational institutions, and she also has a very impressive track record for innovation and excellence in the field of education and beyond. So Gifford, Anne, I'm going to hand across to you.
Right. If you could turn your camera on, please. Thank you. Fantastic. Right. Good evening, everybody. Such a delight to be with you. Just to pick up on a few things before we start on what Sandra was saying, the prime message coming through is that companies that are focusing on EDI really have that urge to get involved, but they simply get stuck on the knowing how and knowing what. So today we are going to give you, I won't call it the magic pill, but we are going to give you a solution that we hope that you will all engage with and be willing to participate with once we show you further towards the end. So my name is Anne Palmer. Today what we're going to do is to take you through 5 areas. Firstly, to explain a little bit about who we are. Secondly, to confirm what it is precisely that we are offering. Thirdly, to confirm with yourselves how we believe this new organisation can support the work that you do in relation to EDI. And then upon that, we'll go into the nitty-gritty of what the levels of accreditation are and how we deliver. And then towards the end of the whole session, we will focus on what the next steps are and how to apply. So if I start by talking a little bit about myself, as Joy said, my name is Anne Palmer. I've got an extensive career within the education field, well over 35 years. And if people ask me about myself, I say 2 things predominantly. The first is I'm all things leadership, and secondly, I'm increasingly all things EDI. And in working with equality and inclusion, the influence I believe that you yourselves and we can make is that if each individual does their little bit, change will happen. And that's the decision that I took when I moved into this field. Do your little bit, and actually it's turned out to be quite a big bit, and change will happen. So I've worked across many institutions, educational institutions, and we've got many across the country that now engage in an accreditation process that is really successful. It allows them to collaborate, it allows them to share best practice, it allows them to become change makers within their communities, local and nationally. I also was privileged to be asked to work with Dr. Ollie's organisation, and you'll hear from him in a short while. And again, in terms of focusing on EDI and the measures, the way that we would work with organisations, I was pleased to be able to work with the engineering community. And again, the methods and types of approaches that you're going to hear today have been successful in other fields. So you are assured that although we are a new company, the years of experience that we are bringing to this new and different approach is very real and very action-based. As Sandra said, one of the clear messages that we're saying today, this is not just about talking, it's about implementing long-term planning and long-term strategy. On that note, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Gifford, please.
Thank you, Anne. It's a joy to be in the same room with so many industry leaders and to share with you this exciting new initiative that we are calling Race Excellence. And I'm delighted to stand beside Anne. I call her the indomitable and towering leader because she is in the DEI sector, and it's just a joy to lead Race Excellence with her. Well, I was first introduced to the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion long before these words were invented. I was a middle manager in the elderly residential sector of social services, and I was in charge or responsible for the senior leadership teams of several residential homes. And upon doing the rounds as one does, I noticed quite early that the residents from, especially from the marginalized backgrounds, had little or no say in their self-determination and in their personal care needs. And so I initiated a small qualitative research into the lived experiences of all of the residents. And the data was overwhelmingly clear that there was little or no voice in the management of their lives, especially those from ethnically diverse communities. Well, armed with this evidence, the leadership teams, thankfully, were open to change, and we co-created a strategy to enable and empower the voices of our residents, and also to support the governance and leadership to improve their structures for better inclusion of everyone. And you can say that this interest in seeking, finding, uplifting, and empowering voices, especially those that are muted and marginalized, has really followed me in my career. For example, as a hospital chaplain, yes, I was a hospital chaplain, I made interventions with the governance of the hospital trusts that they might accommodate all voices, especially those from minority backgrounds. I'd done the same with the Ministry of Justice and my work with the Met Police and the judiciary and other large companies such as Deloitte and the BBC, all about bringing about a mutually respected space where SLT can come and meet with frontline workers in order to negotiate better representation and well-being for everyone. Even in my academic career, and I've been lecturing in tertiary education now for over 20 years, in my academic research, I insist in working with my students, my PhD students that I supervise, that they should explore new possibilities that the values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging bring. And notice I said the values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. However, my greatest satisfaction, I must say, has been when putting my passion, the passion into my compassion, is when I sit with CEOs and their peer groups and sit with board members and see the light bulbs switch on to values of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and see how these translate to their learning of how to suspend their presuppositions, assumptions, biases, and prejudices, and then see how they create and co-create spaces where they adopt strategies to improve their perspectives, new perspectives, policies, personnel initiatives, programs, and practices. So in short, it is this kind of commitment that I bring to my work to enable people in all work settings, people's difference, to make a positive difference in their workplaces. I firmly believe that this is possible, especially with the work that I've done. And it's amazing that race excellence is picking up the mantle in this respect. So what do we offer? Well, we offer an accreditation.
Yeah, just to sort of add to that, Gifford, we may be the first to front faces for the company, but be assured that we have an absolutely excellent team of facilitators and other professionals, supporters, as you can see by the quality of the guests this evening, that are ready and able to facilitate the organisations that choose to partner with us. So we are privileged to be there leading, but be assured that there are a really great group that we have introduced with the word excellence that are waiting to facilitate.
Thank you.
So what do we offer? In terms of, it is an accredited partnership. It's new because what we want are for companies to publicly be acknowledged for the work that they are doing in this area. We want you to be able to link with each other to be able to foster that competitiveness, whereby when employees are looking at places to work, they are, saying, why is it that I should choose this place as opposed to somewhere else? But it's not just about the individual organisations, because we are effectively an association of individuals, but also of groups. And that gathering together, one of the firm things that we have learned from leadership is that things work best when you are not going it alone. As Sandra said, the knowing the how is one thing, but knowing who to partner with to make sure that you actually implement is just absolutely key for yourselves. This is a very different model because it's a sustainable model. And what we find is when companies originally come into the different types of process, they may decide that they have one-off sets of training, or every member of staff within their organization goes through a similar set of training, and then that tick box is covered. Our model is based firmly on an action planning process. We support you with that action planning process. We evaluate that action plan with you and ensure that over the time that you are with us, you sustain, you adapt, you have that support that you need. But in addition to that, we offer a really unique space for executive leaders to start thinking about their own personal values, their own personal beliefs, and how that culture question, how that culture mode really ripples through their own organization. So Gifford, a bit later on in the presentation, will tell you, but we know that executive leaders lead from the front, but very rarely get that opportunity to just pause for a moment, digest, and to consider how their own values and listen to the values of other CEOs and senior leaders. How does that reflect in your organization? But what we offer is summed up in that last statement. We have made a commitment of excellence to yourselves. So we will deliver excellence with you and through you, and from that ensure that you become one of the leaders in the global markets.
And picking up on the question of accreditation, why accreditation? Well, we ensured that we did our due diligence in going through a quality assurance process, and with especially negotiating with external bodies on what sort of standards should be benchmarked. So our accreditation will set benchmarks for improvement. We will provide an international competitive edge. So it's not just benchmarking against UK practice, but across the world. We will establish global recognition for those who are part of the association. And this will give credibility and trustworthiness, and will ensure that there's transparency throughout our relationships.
Call to purpose is, why would you venture into this area if you are not there already? What is the importance of building an inclusive organization? Well, if we leave the sort of emotional intelligence side apart, there are statistical reasons why building inclusive organizations are imperative for business success. We've heard from Sandra already, and we are absolutely delighted to use lots of the evidence that she has gathered to push through what is a really key agenda. So they will, business in the community will remain key allies of ourselves. And as you can see from some of the points that she has highlighted this evening, there are still lots of little pockets of areas that companies are really not addressing and need to focus on as soon as possible. All of you, most of you will be aware of the McKinsey reports, which give very good statistical reasons, again, showing that organizations that are more diverse are more productive and more successful. And we'll see a little bit about those statistics in a moment. But we keep talking about this competitive edge. We know that the UK is changing. Well, actually, the world is changing, and people are fighting back somewhat against the diversity agenda. But the world is diverse. The markets are diverse. We have to reach out to ensure that our companies are facilitating not only our own employees, but those partners that we are choosing to partner with. And that's really focused on number 4, which talks about the people within your organization. And that has to be the starting point. What's going to ensure that those people come to you in the first place? You recruit well. What's going to ensure that those people feel like they belong? Where is their voice going to be? How are you going to retain them? Because we know, particularly with the younger generation, I think the statistics now is that younger generation are likely to do 17 different types of jobs in their careers. But we know that when employees are happy and when they are listened to, and they are, a diverse group, that they actually stay longer. So that sense of belonging is really key for what we are doing. And through the model, you automatically will demonstrate a commitment to the ESG criteria, which we can talk about at some stage. But fundamentally, why build an inclusive organization? It's not just a strap line for us. We say it's the right thing to do. In whatever measure, it's simply the right thing to do.
And as Anne mentioned, the McKinsey reports do demonstrate quite convincingly that where there is diversity, there is better productivity and cohesion in the workplace. And this is just one that I've plucked out, a 2019 analysis that found that companies in the top quartile for ethnic diversity on executive teams were 36% more likely to have above than average profitability than companies in the fourth quartile. And this was up from 33% in 2017. We also know that because of the quality or the lack of quality and well-being of our employees, many are not happy in their workspaces and workplace and in their roles. And this chart reflects the type of or degree of engagement that many of our employees have with their workplace. For example, and this one shocked me, did you know that in a company next to yours, perhaps not your company directly, 73% of the workforce are actually thinking of leaving. And that's a very high number. And that means that a lot of them are disengaged with the ecosystem of the workplace. And we know that when this happens, billions of pounds are lost in the process. So what we're saying is that race excellence will reframe for our clients and for you. We will reframe a model of better engagement, better enablement, better empowerment, and better excellence.
So the key question is, what does the content of race excellence look like and how is it delivered? So you'll see from the model in front of you that there are 3 levels of accreditation. There is gold, there is platinum, and there is diamond. And each of those levels relates to the support, the level of support that you will receive from the race excellence team. So, for instance, for gold, the level of support will be appropriate, but it may not include as many different types of dimension as the platinum and the diamond. we are very personalized in our approach. So when we meet with you to discuss what the requirements are for your organization, that will be discussed, but there should be some notion really about whether you wish a gold level of support, a platinum level of support, or a diamond level of support. So that, as I said, really talks about and emphasizes how many different facets, how many different strategies, how many different types of training you will be able to engage with. And just to give you an example of that on the next page, what is key to all of those levels are 4 elements. The first element is core benefits. The second element is core actions. We have core training, and we have additional purchase options. So the core benefits are the ones that you would expect. Yes, you can use the logo, but you also get newsletters. You can have opportunities to come to events like this where certain things are discussed. You are joining a unique group. So those are core for everybody, and the number of core benefits obviously increases at the support levels. Essentially, the second area, core action, focuses on that sustainable approach where we will support you with putting in place a long-term action plan where your establishment can not only start to consider EDI, but if it's considering it already, that embedding, that long-term approach, what is needed at this time, because organizations are very agile, aren't they? So at any time, what is needed? But the sustainable approach is that you won't just have a one-off event, you will have an action plan that's backed up by some superb people. Core training. It's essential that we focus on leadership, but we will train lots of people in your organization as required. But essentially, leadership drives the ethos. Leadership drives the values. Leadership drives the mission. But within that, you will have your core teams. So certain types of training will be appropriate for them, and we will talk about that with you. And the last area, of course, is the additional purchase options, which allows for that personalization. We will listen well to what it is that you require, and you will have options that will then be proposed to you in moving forward. So we've got the 3 levels, and underpinning those 3 levels are 4 core areas. And just to explore that a little bit further, we've given an example here of the Gold Partnership, which is the first level of accreditation. You can see on the left-hand side, core benefits, core actions, core training, and additional purchase options. And you can see under core training that actually the core training that we are recommending is really at board and trustee levels. The people at the very top, because unless they understand what's needed within their organization, then the work actually doesn't go very far. Again, if you go on to perhaps the higher level of accreditation, just to give you an idea of the kind of things you might want to consider. In diamond level, it might be that your your diversity champion, your diversity lead will want coaching to give them the confidence to liaise across your organization. It might mean that because your leadership team doesn't have a certain level of understanding, that you're going to want all of your leadership team to get some coaching. And there's other, obviously, benefits. But we have termed the additional purchase options as a pick and mix because it's personalised. And Gifford, if you could kindly tell us a little bit more about the pick and mix offer, please.
Yes, as Anne emphasized, the journey with you will be driven by an action plan. And the action plan is actually facilitated and supported by our team. But you might sense that you might need more specialized training and coaching, and we have a smorgasbord of offerings within this model of blended learning that we can pick from. And this is just a sample of what we have. So I can just pick out, for example, the unconscious bias training that we have, and we call it habituated bias. Well, you're going to have to take that module in order to understand what we mean by that. Or you might decide that you want to, you're on a journey of changing the culture of the organization. And as a result, you might want some soft learning approach to help people have conversations around the types of change that you see or that you need. And we will facilitate that, for example, in Lunch and Learn, where we have discussions that enable middle managers and others to generate positive discussions, safe environments where they can actually talk about some of the challenges that they also find. So this is just a package, this is just a sample of the pick and mix menu that we have.
This is a unique partnership. It's unique because you will be given what we have termed a race excellent concierge, a person that will liaise with you on an ongoing basis, a person that will be very clear about the nature of your organisation and what support is needed. You can see from what Gifford and I have just said, there will be a suite of support that we will coordinate with yourselves from the very beginning of the relationship, and that may adapt as you move through. Gifford hasn't mentioned, but his PhD is actually in diversity and inclusion. So we have got a lot of research materials in addition to the wealth of information that BITC has in relation to this area of work. It's unique because it is a long-term approach. We will show you the how and we will show you the what. And clearly looking at the icon there in the top left-hand side, we mark ourselves on outstanding, and we're pleased to recognize in our past history that our work has been recognized as being outstanding, and we are driving that through this new organization. In terms of improving exit velocity, your employees will have a clear understanding of what the values are of your company, whether they choose to stay or whether they choose to leave. But clearly we would want them to stay. But it's the knowing and it's the enactment that are key. And we believe that this offer is very different to anything that we have seen so far.
Well, you know as well as I do that having these conversations are not always easy. In fact, the research shows that of the protected characteristics, race is still the number one topic that's the most challenging to talk about. And so that's one thing. The second thing is, unless the CEO or the leaders of the organization are consistent and persistent with their messaging of the support that they want to see in terms of greater representation, for example, and creating a space of greater inclusion. Unless this happens, it never happens. Everything just goes flat. And after discussing this issue with several CEOs, the idea of creating an exclusive space for CEOs and their peer groups came about. So we are also offering a Race Excellence Executive Lounge, and this will give the senior leaders unparalleled access to information that they need. It will provide strategic insights through particular work newsletters and special meetings. There will be opportunities for peer-to-peer collaboration. There will be tailored experiences for their discussions for their particular work for their particular organization. And here we're talking about one-to-one coaching if necessary. All in all, we're facilitating a space for personal growth and development.
We're delighted that the Executive Lounge will be facilitated and chaired by Joy, who is with us this evening, in addition to ourselves. So, in concluding this first part, this is actually a call to action, isn't it? Because some of you may say, well, I just don't know. So we're telling you to move from doubt to move to action, because we have no choice if society is going to get better, if our organizations are going to improve and be even more successful. We've got no choice but to keep moving forward. We are offering you an inclusive journey where we will talk with you along the way, and ensuring that EDI, diversity, equity and inclusion, become part of your mission. This is a partnership that will ensure that ultimately your organisation will join others in becoming change leaders in the sector. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Anne. Thanks, Gifford. I thought that was a great presentation. And I wanted to come back to what you said at the very start when you were first speaking, Anne, which is do your bit and change will happen. So I think that's what that's the main message that we really need to take away. So thanks again. So now I'd like to introduce our next speaker to talk about the incredible and inspiring work he has done as chair of the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, leading initiatives to increase representation and support for minority groups in engineering and technology sectors, Dr. Ollie Folian, MBE. Thank you so much, Ollie.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be sort of joining this amazing panel, and to be with both Anne and Gifford, and also to have a member of our advisory board, Sandra Kerr, on the call as well. It's a real pleasure. I am the co-founder of the Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, and I also am the chair of the Scottish arm of AFBE. And I am usually required by our team to let you know about our Instagram page, so please do give us a follow. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a family of engineers. My father used to say that in the sort of huge polygamous African family he was raised in, he said he was engineer number 23. And I think other people ask me if I'm the 24th engineer or not. And you would think that it was all of those uncles and aunties who inspired me to become an engineer, but no, the real source of my inspiration came from a book I read when I was 9. And in that book, there was an evil genius who could use solar energy and chemicals for world domination. Like any good 9-year-old Christian boy, I thought that is who I want to be like when I grow up. My values are different now, you'd be pleased to know. But that inspired me to go and study chemical process engineering and fuel technology at the University of Sheffield. I went on to do a PhD at the University of Leeds. And since then, I have worked on numerous projects. I now lead a team of process and safety engineers at a company called Optimus here in Aberdeen. But it was all of those, some of the experiences that I had at the start of my career that led me to this path. I remember arriving on my first day at work and having a number of challenging conversations, even from day one, many of which then continued for years afterwards. I, at the time, did not want to think of it as a racial thing. I've heard of people who constantly go to race as a way of explaining away poor performance, and I thought I never want to be like one of those people. But over time, I started to come across other people, similar backgrounds, also having similar experiences. One of those people was my sister, who'd started her career some years after I did, and was facing exactly the same discrimination in the workplace. And it was because, and we were living in Croydon at the time, there was a lot in the news around youth violence affecting young Black boys. It was the desire to find the people that we couldn't find in our companies, the mentors, and then to use that group of people to reach the community. It was those two things that led us to found the AFBE 17 years ago. Since then, we have been running programs in schools and universities and in the community to help increase the representation of people within the workspace. And the reason why that is important is that if you chart the path of a typical Black and minority ethnic person from the time they're very young to the point at which they become a seasoned professional, what the statistics show is that whilst there is a huge overrepresentation in terms of STEM uptake, the number of people who actually make it into the industry is just 9%. 1/3 of all British engineering undergrads are from a Black and minority ethnic background. But if you look at the number within the industry, it's 9%. 6 months after graduation, a typical engineering undergrad will wait at least 6 months longer than their counterpart to get into work. And there is a pay gap of at least 1,300, even when they start at the same level. We did a survey in 2017 looking at representation at senior level on the boards of companies. And our survey showed that Black representation on the boards of the top 100 engineering companies was lower than 0.3%. So if I could summarize what we've been trying to do for the last 17 years, we want to attract more people into the sector because there are still many communities in which people aren't aware of the amazing career that engineering is. We want to retain talent because the point at which the talent pipeline leaks, if you like, is that point after university where people struggle to find a job. And we want to raise leaders because what we've learned is that without the progression and leadership piece, the attraction and retention piece don't really work. And we run programs to do that. And why is that important? It's been mentioned here today. Companies with above average diversity scores drive 45% average revenue from innovation, while companies with below average diversity scores score only 26%. Companies in the top 25% for racial, ethnic, and gender diversity were respectively 36% and 25% more likely to have superior financial returns, according to McKinsey's. And according to the Equity Effect report, 75% of organizations with frontline decision-making teams reflect a diverse and inclusive culture. Reflecting a diverse and inclusive culture will exceed their financial targets. So this is something that isn't just morally the right thing to do, it's also something that is good for business. And, you know, we have had over that period of time, the privilege of working with many organizations, close to 80 different organizations across the spectrum of engineering companies. And one of the questions that they would typically ask us is, how can we know if we are doing well? How can we know if we're performing? And this is one of the reasons why the Race Excellence charter that has been put together today for the financial sector and for various companies is so important. We got to a point a few years ago when I started to meet together with a number of ERGs, company ERGs, and this was in 2020. And we had our first meeting in March 2020. And by May 2020, the significance of that group became more significant in the wake of the tragic death of George Floyd. And over that time, we have continually met and just shared best practice, success stories, and just encouraged each other trying to drive diversity and racial equity within our organizations. But from those discussions, I remember one member of the team, Falayo Sekita, asking me the question, says, we have things like the disability confident mark. We have Stonewall has a particular type of index. He asked me, is there anything covering racial diversity, this sort of benchmarking tool for the engineering sector? And from that, we started to have discussions. And it was at that point that Falayo's mum actually introduced us to Anne, who just gave us so much impressive advice based on the work that she's done in schools for many years, and many of the things that Anne shared with us, we've been able to translate into this engineering ethnicity index, which we are now working on with various schools. It's an indexing tool for engineering companies to measure their progress on racial and ethnic inclusion in the workplace. We believe that there were so many people in the wake of the death of George Floyd who were signing up to partnerships left, right, and center. What we decided to do was put this together as a way of helping companies know where they are, and actually as a way of gently encouraging them to step further. There is something about competition within the workplace that when one company sees that their competitor has adopted the index that Anne and Dr. Gifford have put together, it may encourage some of the organizations to do the same. And, you know, the Engineering Ethnicity Index, some of the advice that we got from Anne was to look at things like awareness and compliance, equality impact assessment, leadership and management, stakeholder engagement, people strategy and talent management, inclusion of diversity and inclusion as a competency on which staff are appraised, and a commitment to implement and embed equality, diversity, and inclusion at all stages of the organization, people strategy, and talent management process. So we've spoken a lot today about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and furthermore, the importance of having a tool like this that can help organizations benchmark progress, measure. We know what's not measured can't be improved. So we've spoken about the importance. And we also said, we pointed to various studies that show that diversity and inclusion is good for business, and it's good for resilience in a crisis, and it's good for so many other things. But how do I know that this is something that actually works? Well, it's because it's where we have come from. If you look at the progress that we have made as a people, as a society, if I ask you what one of the greatest step changes and innovations of the last 200 years, most people will talk to me about the Industrial Revolution. But without the Glorious Revolution of 1688, in which the seat of decision-making moved from the palace to Parliament, we would not have seen the emergence of a merchant class who will eventually make a lot of the machines that came to define the Industrial Revolution. Many of these people were often opposed by the Luddites of the time. But it was through that resilience and through those step changes that and through the inclusion that they were able to make those advances. We could talk more about the Industrial Revolution, and there is a lot of data that shows that the court process that was used in the forging of iron actually came from a lot of Black slaves in Jamaica. It just demonstrates the fact that every time we have needed to innovate, we have also needed a variety of ideas. I could talk about the 18th century, when the biggest problem of the time was the measurement of longitude, where people would leave one part of the world and end up in another part because they could not find the measuring instruments that could measure longitude accurately. And at the time, some of the brightest minds at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich were looking into the problem and looking to how to solve it. And when the solution would come, it didn't come from those Cambridge and Oxford educated minds at the Royal Observatory. It came from a carpenter, a Yorkshireman, a self-taught watchmaker, John Harrison, who created his own set of watches and solved the biggest problem of his day. He was excluded, he was discriminated against, but without his contribution, we wouldn't be where we are today. I could move even further to the 20th century, when at the First World War, men have gone out to fight and the women have been left to run factories and industries. And when the men returned, the law required these women to return the jobs to the men who'd held them. But these women refused to do that, and they came up, the National Council of Women came up and set up the Women's Engineering Society. And from that emerged many great female engineers, people like Hertha Ayrton, who created the electric arc, who at the time couldn't present her findings because she was a woman. She was discriminated against. But when you and I look back on the last 100 years and the contribution that many of these male and female giants within the engineering space have made, you and I stand on the shoulders of those giants. I could take you to just a few years ago, 2020. Prior to 2020, very few of us used Zoom or Teams. These days, barely a day goes by where we're not on one of those platforms. And how did it come about? It came about from this African-American woman, Marian Croak, who with her team in Google, came up with a voice over internet protocol, allowing us to transfer voices over digital signals. And when I think about the number of people who were saved from having to go into work as a result of this invention, we can see there how the more voices we have, the more people we have, the more inclusive we are, the more beneficial it is for us. And today, we are at this stage of Industry 5.0, where the potential benefits of artificial intelligence and synthetic biology provide the potential to revolutionize all spheres, including finance and law and marketing and every other sphere. And I believe it's the very same approach that has brought us this far that will lead us into those great solutions. And this is why the index that is being launched today is so important. To quote my favorite quote by Octavia Butler, she says, "There is nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns." Thank you very much.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Ollie. Truly impressive. And I really liked the trip through history to really show what kind of, when you have a diverse team, what they can actually be achieved. So it's a great showcase. So thank you so much. I thought that was fantastic. So let's get into the practicalities of how to get involved. And I'm going to hand back to Gifford and Anne to go through the next steps and how to apply to join Race Excellence. Gifford, Anne?
Lovely. That was an amazing presentation, actually. And it's great that when we network and share best practices, we're able to influence excellent movements, such as the one that Dr. Ollie is engaged in and leading in. So thank you very much for sharing that. Can we see the screen, Anne?
No, it's has started screen sharing, but we can't see the presentation.
Okay, let's do that again then. Is this better?
We're just seeing an orange screen at the moment.
Okay, let me try a third time. And here we go. How about this time?
Perfect, lovely. So I can actually feel the excitement in the room as we come to the climax of, do I need to get my wallet, my purse out? Do I need to remortgage my house because I really just want to become involved? So we're going to go through some basic things around pricing before we conclude this evening. How much does it cost? Well, you'll see from the website that we've put various indicators in around how we will put the prices together for you. Contributing factors include obviously the complexity of the project, the scope, whether you come in on gold or whether you come in on platinum or diamond, all of that is added in. But also, how long are you going to be partnering with us? Is the work going to be really intensive in the first place? Although this is a long-term partnership, the duration of the program, and it might be that we sort of put it into components, into chunks of work, so that it facilitates what you need. Again, your organizations, we have put this together in such a way because we don't want to turn away any organizations or businesses that really do need to focus on this work. But clearly there is an indicator there whether we are training 50 personnel or whether we are training 500 or more personnel. So there are factors in there that we will of course consider also. And if you are looking to do this in a sort of sector-wide approach, that your organization actually has lots of different offices or lots of different fields in different locations, that again will influence the pricing. But you know what I always say, sometimes people say, because clearly we run successful businesses anyway, and I say to people, you know, something around diversity inclusion, it's part of who we are. Yes, there has to be money involved for practical reasons in preparation and engagement and so forth, but there's a moral purpose to all of this, isn't there? That it's not just about the money. It's about the commitment to say, as we said with the previous quote, to keep pushing ahead, to keep moving forward. So we are very competitive, and we will do whatever we can to put a really good package together with you under one of those three criteria.
And how do we apply, and how do we onboard you? Well, of course, there are a number of ways that you may contact us, but a popular way will be through our website. And there are links where you can book an appointment. And once you book an appointment with us, we will meet with you and we will scope the needs that we have a discussion around this. And so that we are scratching where you are itching, and that it is purposeful, and that there is a clear action plan. Once we agree a contract and it's signed, we will then assign you to a race excellence concierge. So this is a highly qualified and skilled expert who will basically escort you on your action plan journey, so that you can realize the goals and the aspirations that you have for your organization. There are ways to do this through the QR code, for example. So here we have a QR code, and you might take a moment to just take out your phones and take a picture of this. Otherwise, you can just visit our website, raceexcellence.com. One word, raceexcellence.com.
Cheryl has actually put the link directly to our diaries in the chat box also, Gifford.
Excellent, excellent. So coming to an end now, and just thinking through the number of talks that you've heard, the information that you have been privy to, and some of it has been inspiring, some of it has been a lot to take in, but nevertheless, all of it has been part of what we as a community are seeking to aspire towards. And we thought a way of capturing this discussion and presentation is in this wonderful quote, and I'll just share it with you in closing. In the realm where excellence meets opportunity, greatness is not just a destination, but a journey of relentless pursuit and boundless potential. And Race Excellence, by name and by nature, is committed to this journey of relentless pursuit and boundless potential. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Anne and Gifford. I love that last quote. I think it's brilliant. I encourage everyone participating today to sign up and drive positive and lasting change within your organization. I'm afraid we've come to the end of the webinar. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to send us an email and we'll follow them up in the next coming week. It's been a great discussion, and it just leaves me to thank our brilliant guest speakers, Sandra, Ollie, Anne, and Gifford. Thank you so much, as well, of course, as our brilliant audience that has stayed with us. Just by attending the launch of Race Excellence proves to me that you want to cultivate a culture of belonging and innovation. Thanks so much for being part of the beginning of what I truly believe will be an industry-changing initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.